Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am incredibly excited to unpack this one with you because honestly, we are looking at an absolute masterclass in tension here. Today, we're diving into Vinland Saga Chapter 217, a chapter where the human combatants are entirely overshadowed by this invisible, active antagonist, disease. Sickness has fully infiltrated the island, and it is radically forcing the hands of every single warrior out there. We're going to look closely at exactly how this completely changes the battlefield, shifts the entire balance of power, and, well, tests the absolute limits of pacifism. Let's get right into it.
So just look at that question for a second. Take a moment to really think about it. Because before we even meet our characters today, we have to understand the grim reality of the ground they're standing on. You've got two factions, right? They're totally ready to slaughter each other over territory. But nature has introduced a plague that's essentially already doing the job for them. The stakes are terrifyingly high. Time is literally running out, not because enemy reinforcements are arriving, but because the very air they breathe is killing them. It's a completely terrifying backdrop for a negotiation, and it just totally reshapes the strategies of everyone involved.
All right, moving on to Section 1, the weaponization of sickness.
Okay, let's dive into this. It's a completely cruel yet, you have to admit, highly effective tactic. We have the Lunu warrior, Mafine, and he isn't trying to heal the sick here, he's actively using them. He's intentionally trapped individuals infected with the plague right out in the open. And why? Because as he so chillingly puts it, he's lighting a bonfire. By leaving the sick out there to suffer, he knows their healthy comrades are going to try to rescue them. They'll come running like moths to a flame. It is a completely ruthless strategy that weaponizes human empathy against his enemies, turning the sheer tragedy of an illness into a tactical ambush. And you know, this manipulation of the crisis, it doesn't just stop at battlefield tactics. McQuinn takes it a massive step further to fuel a total power grab. Because his specific clan, the Gippi tribe, hasn't succumbed to the sickness yet, he leverages this temporary immunity into absolute authority. While the established leaders are dying off left and right from the disease and the war, McQuinn just steps right into that vacuum. Notice the sheer, absolute arrogance in his expression as he declares himself the most powerful authority and the new boss of the island. He doesn't view the plague as a disaster, he views it as his ultimate career opportunity.
Which brings us to Section 2, the weight of peace.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what true leadership looks like in a crisis. Into this literal war zone steps Thorfinn. But crucially, he isn't charging in with a drawn sword or screaming a war cry. Nope. He is walking directly into heavily armed enemy territory, pulling a sled. And what's on that sled? It's not weapons, it's not provisions. It is a massive, incredibly heavy stone. Against this crazy backdrop of drawn bows and raised weapons, Thorfinn arrives utterly unarmed, burdened only by the literal and figurative weight of the message he's trying to deliver.
So, what is this message? Well, it's just a single word carved deeply into that heavy stone. Frigger. That's the Old Norse word for peace. By carving it into stone, Thorfinn isn't just making some fleeting verbal promise, he is creating a physical, permanent anchor of peace right in the middle of a chaotic, bloody battlefield. What's really fascinating here is that historically, Norse runestones were almost exclusively used as memorials for the dead. But here, Thorfinn is brilliantly subverting that entire tradition. He's using one to try and keep people alive. He wants to firmly plant the very concept of peace into the ground they're fighting over, trying to make it as undeniable and real as the weapons pointed right at him.
You can really truly feel the physical toll of this in the artwork. Placing this runestone is a massive, back-breaking struggle. Thorfinn is physically exhausting himself just trying to drag and plant this symbol. And it so perfectly mirrors the emotional and psychological struggle of maintaining a pacifist philosophy in a world that just constantly defaults to violence. The heavy lifting isn't done with a sword, you know? The heaviest burden of all is actively building peace when literally everyone around you is hell-bent on destruction.
Let's move into Section 3, a hostage for evacuation.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark, unmissable contrast between our two chiefs. I mean, they are dealing with the exact same crisis, but their reactions are polar opposites. Chief Muin uses the disease and violence to elevate himself and just crush anyone in his way. Chief Thorfinn, on the other hand, actively lowers himself. He strips away his own freedom and offers himself up as a prisoner just to buy the lives of his people. It's a brilliant, brilliant character study on the deep differences between ruling through fear and leading through sheer sacrifice. So the terms get set pretty quickly, and man, they are incredibly harsh. Muin, recognizing exactly how valuable Thorfinn is, has absolutely no interest in talking peace.
He demands that Thorfinn surrender himself as a hostage. The condition is simple but brutal. Thorfinn becomes a prisoner of the Lunu, and in exchange, Thorfinn's people, the Nords, must immediately and entirely evacuate the island. If they don't leave, Thorfinn will undoubtedly be killed.
And Thorfinn? He agrees instantly, barely even a second thought. But notice his internal realization here. He looks at Muin, a guy who has literally killed his own comrades, and realizes something deeply profound. Thorfinn came to this new land to escape men who love war and murder, men who are utterly indifferent to the pain of others. And yet, here they are. He realizes he can't outrun human nature. Figuring out how to actually deal with these kinds of men without resorting to their own violent methods, that, as he says, is his life's work.
And the sheer urgency of that life's work becomes horrifyingly clear as Thorfinn is led through the enemy camp. The narrative pacing really speeds up here to just visually overwhelm us. I mean, look at the sheer devastation. Bodies littering the ground. This isn't even a military camp anymore, it's a graveyard. The scale of the death running rampant through the Lunu tribe is catastrophic, and it visually reinforces exactly why this petty war over territory absolutely has to end right now.
Inside the tents, it's just as bad. The sick are coughing up blood, entirely incapacitated. This grim reality completely validates Thorfinn's desperate plea for a ceasefire, because disease, it doesn't care if you're El Nu or Nord. It is the ultimate equalizer. When both sides are quite literally drowning in their own blood from illness, arguing over who owns a patch of dirt becomes tragically absurd. The whole territorial war is utterly obsolete at this point.
All right, let's head into Section 4, the final standoff.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because the visual irony here is fantastic. Thorfinn arrives back at his own fortress, but he's flanked by enemy warriors. The shock on the faces of the Nord soldiers is palpable. Their leader has returned alive from the battlefield, which honestly is a miracle, but he is entirely under enemy control as an envoy for a ceasefire. Standing right before his own fortified walls, Thorfinn delivers his decree, and he does it with absolute unwavering authority. The terms are that all Nords must evacuate the island. It is definitely not a suggestion, it's a non-negotiable command. He's essentially forcing his own people to accept total defeat on paper, abandoning their entire settlement just to secure a definitive end to the bloodshed. But of course, pride and military bravado, they die hard. We immediately get this incredible ideological clash. On one side, you have the unarmed pacifist Thorfinn, literally wrapped in a blanket, stating the hard truth. On the other, you have Sturk, fully armored up, peering out from behind high walls, stubbornly challenging the terms. Sturk is suffering from the delusion of the warmonger, insisting that just because they have walls and weapons, they still have the strength to launch an offensive.
So the crucial point is how Thorfinn utterly shuts down this delusion. He hits them with a ruthless reality check. There is no longer that kind of military strength left in the fort, is there? It's a brilliant checkmate. He completely exposes the lie they're telling themselves. Sure, they might have armor, but inside that fort they are being just as ravaged by the disease as the enemy. Neither side actually has the strength to fight, they only have the pride to pretend they do. Which leaves us with this final, burning question. Thorfinn has physically planted the stone of peace. He's offered his own life as collateral, and he has ruthlessly stripped away the delusions of his own army. But in a camp filled with desperate, dying, and heavily armed people, will this ultimate sacrifice actually hold? Can one man's absolute commitment to peace really overcome the momentum of war and the pure panic of a plague? That is the incredible tension we're left with today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this breakdown helps you fully appreciate the brilliant, high-stakes storytelling we just witnessed. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.